Thursday, January 6th, beginning at 6:02 p.m. This meeting will take place partially remotely pursuant to the law signed by Governor Baker on June 16th, 2021, an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which includes an extension until April 1st, 2022, of the remote meetings provisions of his March 12th, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. This meeting will be recorded. May I have a roll call to get started? I will start in the Zoom room with Ms. Stout.
Aye. Present.
Ms. Tolley?
Present.
Ms. Games?
Present.
Ms. Rogers?
Here.
Ms. Scott?
Present.
Mr. Russell?
Present.
And Ms. Zebrat-Long?
Present.
And I am here. Moving on, I am looking for a motion for adjournment to executive session.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Scott?
I move that we move to executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Paragraph 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with Local 888 SEIU, status of the superintendent, and potential hiring process if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the district's bargaining or litigation position, and the chair so declares it, coming out for regular session at approximately 7 p.m.
I would second that.
And a roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tolley?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Zebrat-Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye. And we will adjourn to executive session at 6:04 and resume at 7 p.m.
Recording
there she is. All right, are we, we're ready? I was just gonna
Recording in progress.
not really, but.
Okay, so we have rejoined regular session from our executive session, where we discussed, at 7:05, we discussed the memorandum of agreement that was successfully negotiated with the local 888 SEIU, which is the custodial union. It has been ratified by the union, and the school committee discussed it during our executive session. I'm going to hand the mic over to, no? Oh, let's back up and go to public comment. Anyone here for public comment tonight? All right, seeing none, we will move on to approval of the minutes. We will do it separately. First, I will look for a motion to approve the December 2nd, 2021 minutes.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Scott?
I move to approve the December 2nd, 2021 meeting minutes.
Second?
And a roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tolly?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Abstain?
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Zebret Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye. And a motion to approve the minutes from December 16th.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
She didn't hear you.
Ms. Stout? Oh, you have to unmute. Just
Yeah, I'm muted, but
Sharon, we are approving the minutes from December 16th.
well, you called on me first. I said aye.
Oh, we didn't hear that. Okay. Ms. Dolly?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Abstain?
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Zebret Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye. All right, moving down to reports and discussions. The regional agreement with the DESI required changes. Dr. Carpenter?
Sure. Can we pull up the presentation? And Michael, you want to slide for us? Yeah. And just jump us down to the first section of it. Just all the way down to number 1. So we got feedback back from the Department of Ed on we'll call it the two-step process of dealing with all things fiscal, first with the regional agreement, and they are supportive of it. There are 2 things that they are insisting that we have to do in this round, or in the first round, that are things budget related. So in your packets is the, we'll call it the not red line document, the one that lines side by side the original agreement to where to where we have changes. So the very first thing so there's only two things that the Department of Ed said that they would, that they want to see addressed. And the first shows up on page 8. So the original language is being projected up there, and it's under the section on budget, clause C1. And the important piece here is it says that said proposed budget shall be approved by majority vote with at least one committee member from each member town voting in the affirmative. And I am well aware that particularly for Chatham, given the weighted voting, this is a very important clause. But what the Department of Ed is emphasizing is that statutorily, it should not have ever been in the agreement on the first place, because under state statute, regional district budgets are approved by majority vote of the committee. And that's how it's laid out in state statute. And that we can't have a clause after that requires something greater than what the state statute says. So you can't say that that with at least one school committee member from each town voting in the affirmative, or two, or anything. So what the Department of Ed is saying is that it just needs to have a period after majority vote. And I also know that that's not something that is appetizing on, for either town. So a proposal that our attorney has suggested is on the next page, which is on in the not red line version, the side by side, is to put a preamble to that sentence that really describes what does happen in reality anyway, which is the practice has been that before budgets come to the table here to be voted on, there is a budget, or we've been calling it a finance subcommittee, that is comprised of membership from both towns, and that subcommittee votes to move forward a budget. And so the suggested piece here would be to have that process would have one member from each town voting in the affirmative, that we're working out budgets at the subcommittee level, that there's buy-in from each town before it comes to the table here. So this is what our lawyer has proposed as a workaround. Some of the guidance that he is looking for from the committee is does this seem like the viable workaround to go, because we need to go now have him take the suggested workaround back to the Department of Ed for their feedback. So we're trying to get the feedback, but this is one of two spots that they want. It fixes the piece, so when we have the sentence that says said proposed budget, when it comes to the table here, shall be approved by majority vote, period. There's not a clause after it. So I'll sort of stop there and let's discuss this piece, and then we'll go to the second change that the Department of Ed has suggested.
Any questions or comments for Dr. Carpenter with this change? Ms. Scott?
I think it's a nice addition. I think it kind of speaks to the concerns that were brought up about the conversation would have been a Harwich-dominated vote as budget, because Harwich would have had 4 votes. That's the majority of the committee, 4-2. So I think this is a good workaround to bring in those concerns, to say that before it even comes to the full committee, it would have approval by at least one Chatham member on the subcommittee. So I feel that it's a strong statement to say that it is something that we had concern about. It's something that we are aware, and this is a way to not allow that to happen. So I think it's a good idea. I'd like to see what DESE says about it.
Mr. Russell?
I would agree with Nancy. I think that if there's a mandate coming down from DESE that takes the argument away from us, one way or the other, this, to me, is an ideal workaround to make certain our Chatham colleagues see this as a process regarding the Subcommittee on Finance.
Anyone else? All right,
I was just going to say, what I like about it is, it's an affirmation of what has been happening for the last 9 years anyway. So I think it's a good way to approach it, because it's just clarifying and putting into, the regional agreement, which is a living document, a process that has been working for this group.
Mr. Russell?
If I could echo that, I happened to listen to, and good job, Scott, the other night with the Harwich Select Board, and this was explained for them maybe the first time hearing it. And in my memory, Nancy, correct me, in all the years I've been sitting here regarding the major issue that we're here, or one or two of the major issues, that is voting on annual budget. Those budgets, in my memory, have almost been unanimous for the last 8 or 9 years. So I'm comfortable with this as being a solution.
Great, okay. And the other big change?
So, Michael, do you want to advance to number, 9-8? So the next shift, actually, or the next DESE required change happens on page 23 of the side-by-side, not redlined version. So in the existing language, it says that the school committee may vote to incur debt consistent with state law, Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 16. And at the time of taking action to incur the debt, that it can go by majority vote to choose one of two processes that are outlined in the law, Section D and Section N, and I'll kind of explain them in a second here. So if we jump to the next page, Michael, in terms of what needs to change, when you incur debt, statute says that it needs to be a 2/3 vote, not a majority vote. So DESE's saying that majority needs to be 2/3. And then what DESE is asking us to do is to specify in the regional agreement a choice of either N or D. So here's the explanation of N and D. When the region came together, and I was not here then, but if I understand correctly, and you borrowed for this high school, it wasn't just town meeting that approved it. It was town meeting and a vote at the polls. That is Section N. If you go about it to just have it be a vote at a town meeting and bypass an approval at the poll, it's Section N. So, so Section N is sort of a two-step process N's a two-step process that requires a town meeting, approval, and the polls. D is just town meeting, but but the law says that a school committee has the potential to go and change their mind and go with D instead of N, but to do that, it needs to have a 2/3 vote. And, and I am suggesting that we choose N, although it's a more stringent requirement. I actually think it's sort of a good faith gesture to all out there that this is the default method that as a school district, we'd seek when borrowing.
Can I ask a question?
Ms. Scott?
But it says subsection D as well later. So you're suggesting that we follow subsection N, which is the two-step process, which is the step we took to begin with. So what is the second piece? Reading it quickly is not
the
clear.
original, Michael, if we go back up to the original wording. So the original wording basically said that when you incur debt, you choose one or two methods by majority vote. This is just shifting it to say, when you incur debt, you'll go with this default method unless by a 2/3 majority vote, you're going to choose the other.
So the default would be, we're going to do the two-step process, but as a committee, if we decide that we want to not do the two-step process, we could do by 2/3 vote, change to the one-step process.
Correct. And you can imagine that to do so, you would be reaching out to your select boards and seeing what's the pulse out there. But I think most, if you're going to borrow for something big, this is typically it's what happened when the district came together. So let's define it as sort of the default.
Okay. I agree that I like the default of being a two-step process.
Ms. Gaines?
So just for clarification on the two-step process, so you have 2 town meetings and 2 votes at the polls. So hypothetically, what happens if the vote at the polls happens to be no? Then you're E?
Yeah, we saw that next door regarding a middle school for quite some time. And, so it puts a higher burden on a committee and a superintendent to go sell why there's the need to borrow.
Mr. Russell?
I would recommend us considering the two-step. It's far more transparent, and it's exactly what we had to go through 11 or 12 years ago when we went to both towns to ask for the money to build this building. And also, for a minor reason, that you're talking here about major debt, and the public needs to see that as many votes as possible. And also, it's so infrequent that we're not seeing this every 10 years or 5 years. So I would suggest we go with the two-step.
Ms. Tully?
Do we need to have the I guess, clause or that other option to say, or as a school committee by 2/3 vote, we could choose to do the one-step process?
So if I'm correct, when I went into the Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 16, there's this mechanism out there to go one or the other, and so I think that I think even if it wasn't in the regional agreement, there's a law out there that states that you could do this other. It's just sort of it's sort of parroting what's in the law. If that makes sense.
So basically by including it, it's essentially redundant to the law that already exists. But that option will always be there for the committee anyway, regardless if it's in the agreement or not. Right?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? So I'm looking for a motion. To emergency right law.
Sorry, hard to reach.
I move to approve the regional agreement as presented with the new DESI required changes.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tolly?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Zebret Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye. All right. Moving on to number 2, the feedback from the Harwich Budget Forum.
Sure, so, so the presentation that in part we were just projecting, we shared with the Harwich Select Board, which is the budget presentation that we've given here. What we did is we just took out and just took each section that's changing and tried to have, a side-by-side so that, again, trying to be transparent and clear. It was well-received by the Harwich Select Board, both in terms of them feeling that this was a sort of clear process that the average, voter could go and understand, and that this, that a document like this one with sort of blue, with the blue explanatory boxes in it, they felt, would be good to move forward. To a warrant, they voted unanimously to support this in moving this forward, and Michael and I have already reached out to Chatham to start talking about when we can get on their agenda to give the same presentation and the same conversation there, but did send the information to Chatham in advance. We sent it at the same time we sent it to Harwich.
Ms. Tolly?
Do you have a date for when you will be presenting it to Chatham Select Board?
Michael, did they get back with a date yet for us presenting in Chatham?
On the budget, they asked, well, actually, funny enough, he reached out to
The regional
me
agreement.
so firm up the date.
Yeah, so it's not been confirmed yet.
Ms. Gaines?
Yeah, listening to the Harwich Board of Selectmen speak, not that I don't think they asked for it, but there was an anticipation, perhaps, or an expectation is the better word, that the work group would be meeting again. So I'm assuming that is probably on our radar, I guess, because there was an expectation that we were going to gather again. Maybe after the Chatham presentation?
I think it could become, I think anytime, I think it
Okay.
would make sense. I don't know who's calling a
The
convening
meeting?
of the,
I think, Ms. Gaines, if you're willing to...
Myself or Ms. Scott? Yes, one of us.
one of you, to reach out to the members that are currently on the working group. I know it's hard to get things on calendars, so maybe just...
Are we going to put another person on there? Because isn't that where we left it?
Yes.
We were, so...
We can do that at subcommittees.
That's another agenda item that was in our packets.
Yep.
But it is, it was on the agenda packet, but it's not in our actual, so I was going to push it to the next meeting because it's not physically here unless we're okay with it.
Finish this one up.
Okay, we can discuss it in a moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Where does that leave us?
Anything else?
Mr. Russell?
Just a question, Tina, good point. I also heard the chair, the select board chair, mention to Mary, the new member, that she's the appointed representative. And it was done lightly enough. I would echo the sense that any meeting, the next meeting that takes place should be with our team leaders in the Board of Selectmen in Chatham before the working group, because I just think the information we heard tonight is just complicated enough that I don't know 11 people virtually would somewhat complicate what would be, I just heard from. So I would suggest that we allow Michael and Scott and anybody else to attend the charter meeting and share with them first, then go forward.
And I agree with that, Terry. I do, because I think there are concerns probably on both sides that we need to hear before we get together. So I would agree with you. Yes.
Ms. Scott?
So just to kind of wrap up, I think that after you get a date from Chatham and when you're going to be presenting this, we then, either you or I will, rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
To figure out when to set up after that meeting with the select board, because I agree, they need to see the presentation and have their discussion before we meet, because otherwise if we have it before, they won't have the full information. So as soon as you guys get that date, then we can reach out to set up a working group after that select board meeting.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Anything else? Okay, moving on to what I tried to jump in first with, reporting out from executive session. The first item we discussed was the local 888 SEIU contract, which is the custodial union. It was successfully negotiated, the memorandum of agreement was successfully negotiated, and it was ratified by the union, and the school committee discussed it during executive session. And I will just pass it over to Ms. Games, who was on the negotiation committee.
Thank you. I'll just take a moment. Yes, the union ratified the agreement last week, so now we need to ratify it tonight. And I just want to take a moment to thank all of those on the negotiations team, Terry, Nancy, myself, and members of the administration, Michael, Mark, Rick Travers, Ellen, and Scott. And I thought it was a really good team. I want to thank you all for your efforts. We had many more meetings than we were expecting, so I do thank all of you for your participation. And I'm actually going to turn this over to Michael to just highlight parts of the contract for us. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mike McMillan, I'm the school business manager. So so the custodian contract runs out at the end of June of this year, and so we were negotiating for a 3-year contract to start July 1st. Kind of the highlights were really around the salary, so we agreed cost of living increases to the existing salary steps of 2.5%, 2.75% and 2% over the next 3 years. So those first 2 years mirror what was already agreed with the teacher and other contracts, and the 2% is the first one that we've agreed for FY25. We also agreed a couple of changes to the existing steps. So we removed the first step of the custodian salary schedule and added one more to the top at 3% over the existing top. And for the lead custodian salary schedule, we dropped the first step and added 2 steps to the top. So those are they're really the most, are the biggest impact changes, and the rest were kind of smaller and kind of tidying up a couple of things, but those are the main ones.
Great. Any questions, discussion? All right, so looking for a motion to approve.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Scott?
I move to approve the memorandum of agreement with the SEIU Local 888.
I will second that.
And a roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tolley?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Zebret Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye. So moving on to our fourth agenda item under reports and discussion, which is revised subcommittee assignments. Are we okay to discuss it with it being in the digital agenda packet and it's not physically here? We're okay? So it was just really a quick change, I appointed Jessica to the superintendent evaluation subcommittee as well as the working group. And then she was already appointed to the collaborative as a liaison at our last meeting. Previous to Jessica joining us, we did vote to change the negotiation subcommittee down to 3 members. I'm not sure we needed to add Jessica to that because I think just those 2. So That's really all. Do we have any discussion or questions about that? Ms. Gaines?
Yeah, the only question I would have with negotiations is, if anything came up, would we, I mean, I think it's fine. I just would look to some of my colleagues that have been here longer than I have. Are there any circumstances that might come up between now and the end of the year that would require negotiations? I mean, hypothetically, can anybody think of anything?
No.
Okay, all right. Well, if not, then I think it's okay.
And maybe we revisit it if there's a need to.
Okay.
Does that feel okay to everybody? Ms. Tolley?
Can you remind me, because I saw the digital version, but what is the current makeup of the finance committee? I thought there was some moving piece to the finance committee as well.
I don't believe so. I think the finance committee is myself, Ms. Zebret Long, Mr. Russell, and Ms. Scott.
Okay. Our previous member was not on that committee. Okay.
Nope. Okay, so moving on to the subcommittee reports.
Wait,
Ms. Stout?
yes, so, I don't know if you remember, Meredith, but I asked to be on special ed pack, and you said that would be great. Under liaisons?
Okay. We can put that on for the next meeting, but I agree with you, Sharon. So we'll put it on for the next meeting to make it official.
And also, we might want to think about, I've been on policy forever. I would like to be on finance, but I think we should, like, when people are new, it might be good for one person to come on to get the idea of what's happening in there, at least. So, I'm not trying to shake anything up here, but it's just like a lot of times the same people are on. I think that finance committee, except for you, Meredith, has had the same people forever. And I'd like to see, and it may be other committees too, that's the only one I'm glancing at right now, to change it around a little bit once in a while.
So I think that we were just in a unique situation this year where Jessica just joined us. So that's kind of where the revisions came from in the middle of our year. But we can definitely talk about that when we reorganize in June. But I'll bring it back for the special education liaison for you for the next meeting. Okay.
Madam Chair, just a quick question. So did we not have CPAC, right? CPAC, did we not have did we not have a liaison? It was you.
Yes.
And you were just looking to, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's fine. Thanks.
Okay, moving on to subcommittee reports. We have the first reading, the policy file EBCFA face coverings, which I believe is just that minor change. Ms. Tolley?
Yeah, there were two other additional words that we altered, just to add a little bit of clarity in the policy. You'll see them up top. Part of it was because this policy was created as we were reopening, we needed to remove that word because we are currently operating, and so that's why that word is in there. And then, again, kind of taking out the idea that we're coming back or returning, but to put this policy in a more constant, ongoing language. So that's why those two other changes are in there. Other than that, the correction was made in the formatting to have that third bullet point under number 4. And we did adjust the order of the words a little bit to just clarify that it's during outside physical education and recess or fresh air time.
Sounds good. Any questions or discussion? Okay, so we will bring this back next meeting for a second reading. All right, moving right along to the superintendent's report. Dr. Carpenter?
Sure. So, first of all, in your packets, there was a really sweet story that was in the news just before we left for the holidays, and I wanted to just sort of acknowledge and thank the Chatham Elementary School Kindness Club and, for what they did making bracelets for the Jimmy Fund Clinic. And it was also really sweet to see little Haiti Beerworth, who I've seen grow up for years because my daughter's been babysitting over there for quite some time, to see this young lady blossoming and being so articulate in the news. So I really appreciate them setting a nice tone for really what the holiday season was all about. I would like to also thank the MIT Club of Cape Cod for their mini grant in the amount of $500 to the high school STEM robotics program, to thank Cape Cod 5 for their educational mini grant in the amount of $500 to support the mental health seminar for faculty project as proposed by one of our high school health teachers, Stacy Yarnell, and for their support of a mini grant in the amount of $500 for the graphic novels to boost reading achievement and confidence project at Harwich Elementary School that was proposed by librarian Sarah Eidman. And then I'd like to thank resident Janet Lewis for her donation of golf clubs and balls to the high school golf team. And then finally, on a sadder note, I just want to acknowledge the passing of John O'Brien, who was a former Harwich School Committee member. And John served on the school committee from 2005 to 2010, and also had a number of different roles that he served in the town of Harwich. So it's quite a loss there. In terms of more upbeat news, COVID. You may have noticed, but there's a spike out there, and I keep thinking back that, was it 2 months ago we had the COVID dashboard, and it was no cases in any of the schools, and it was like exciting, and then in fairly small number of cases. At the moment, our nurses are tracking 169 COVID cases, which include 18 cases at Chatham Elementary School, 11 students, 7 staff. At Harwich Elementary School, 44 cases, 35 students, 9 staff. At the middle school, 44 cases, including 40 students and 4 staff. And the bumper crop at the high school with 63 cases, including 50 students and 13 staff. And, and it just, it went from 0 to 60, it felt, and we knew that things were starting to look a little challenging. The state issued, they had a vision of distributing rapid antigen tests for all staff before we came back, and the test kits themselves that were coming to the state got delayed and delayed and delayed. So I ended up picking up tests. I think it was early Saturday morning at Barnstable High School. They had made their way from Franklin to Barnstable High School, and I appreciate those that came over and had a COVID test breaking apart party on my kitchen table because the state didn't also have enough tests for everyone. So I had the option of either distribute 270 tests to 377 staff and bus drivers and decide who's not going to get them, or split them so that we ensured everybody got one, and then we have a stash of others that we've left in each nurse's office that staff can go in if they feel they need to use one of the others. So we took the approach that everybody's going to get one. I already took one prior to the start of the school day on Monday on their own, and 3 staff who were completely asymptomatic and ready to go to work were flagged with being COVID positive. They show up in those numbers that I just read. On Mondays, we also did our pool testing. In the past, we have had usually a handful or less of positive pools. We knew it was going to be bad, and the emails started dinging all night long, and by morning there were 29 positive pools, and I was getting texts from several saying, please cancel school, and just thinking it was too many positive pools to manage. I give our nurses a lot of credit. I started shifting gears and diverting central office staff so that we were heading in, and Joy was heading one direction, Tony London heading another, Kathleen another, so that we sort of got the staff into the health offices to support them. And by 11 a.m., they had found all of the positives in those pools and accomplished at 11 a.m. what they thought was undoable at 6. So great job, great work, nurses. It's been challenging this week, but the nice thing is that despite how frantic it was on Monday and Tuesday to get back in, things started to really settle yesterday and today, and there still are kids going to the nurse's office, feeling a little under the weather. The nurses are calling home. When parents give them permission, they're testing, and each day we have some kids that are going home positive. But we also, on the plus side, are having kids that are now coming back in. So it's like it feels like we're not in a losing battle at the moment, and I'm cautiously optimistic. We also went and put in place the new CDC guidelines with regard to how one handles if they're COVID positive or if they are a close contact. So in your packet is some graphics that Ms. Jordan has put together for everyone. Probably the biggest thing that we've been hearing a lot about in the news is this concept where initially we were starting off with it was 10 days that you were quarantining, and then there were an option that if you tested after day 7 you could come back, and now the CDC is saying that on day 5 you can come back if you're asymptomatic. The science behind that is that in the initial days before one feels sick, they tend to be quite infectious, and they're quite infectious for the first few days once they start to notice they're sick and that they'd be testing positive. And that by day 5, it should be petering off. We've been doing a lot of, we'll call it our own research. We've got a lot of rapid tests that we're using. I think the really important thing is that underlying statement, if you have no symptoms. So if you have no symptoms and you were in a nurse's office and the nurse is swabbing you, more than likely you are not going to show up positive on a rapid antigen test 5 days later. If you continue to have a cough, a runny nose, aches, if you're having those symptoms that you had been feeling and they're still with you, and you do that test, it will still come back positive, that you're still in that infectious place. So we need to have, and we'll be putting out stuff to families and to staff to be really clear that the CDC changed their guidelines. It doesn't mean I'm positive 5 days later, woohoo, I can leave isolation. It is 5 days afterwards if you have no symptoms. And then for the next 5 days, you're supposed to wear a mask. When you go out, you should be wearing one at home if you want to keep people in your household from becoming positive. But we've been communicating out this in writing to families and putting links, but we'll be sending the graphics and putting the graphics up on our website. And so I think that covers 1, 2, and 3 on the superintendent's report.
Any questions, discussion, Ms. Gaines?
Yeah, I just have a question for, because I know for, first of all, thank you, Joy. This is very nice. Nice, and at first I thought it came from CDC, so this is very nice, Joy. So for the tests, where, my understanding is people aren't able to find them or get scheduled, so what do you recommend, or maybe the nurses are recommending to families?
So to get tested, right, I think if we step back to, I believe it was Monday, we were hearing that by noon, many of the pediatrician offices and the hospital had stopped, like they were just getting overwhelmed with people coming in and the wait at Fontaine to get tested. I think right now, if you're, we have been highly recommending PCR tests, but we have been relying also more and more on these rapid antigen tests. And when you have so much COVID out there, if a rapid antigen test is coming up positive, while it could be a false positive, at this moment in time, I would take it as accurate, because you might not be able to find a PCR test to be had, but we still are doing we have Binex tests, and we're still doing the test and stay. That's still in place. So we are, as long as kids are asymptomatic, if they've been close contacts here at school, we're keeping them in school and doing what we can. But I think earlier in the week, we were running about, if you look at how many are positive, we were running about 20% of the students were out, and a significant portion of them out positive, and we also will fully acknowledge that what's on the COVID dashboard are the positives that we've been told. We only can go and log what we know.
Okay,
and
thank you.
I think with rapid antigen tests, so widely available, you can get them. Sometimes more challenging. They're becoming harder to find in stores. But when you get a PCR test, those results end up getting reported to the state, and we end up hearing about it. The home tests are home tests, and we rely on parents to report that to us, and they have been great about doing it.
Okay, well, that's good. My concern was just, are people having access? Because I had just heard lots of stories that people weren't able to find the test, they couldn't get tested, and so I just had some concerns about how that was working, if you can't find a test.
It is a challenge out there right now.
Terry, and then Mr. Russell, and then Ms. Stout. Right after Mr. Russell. Sharon.
I'd be interested, with this increase that we're all aware of, how are we doing with our substitutes relative to staffing?
I think we hit a place, well, we've actually been at this place for quite some time. It's sort of all hands on deck, and again, it's not just our nurses who have been stepping up to the plate here, but when you've got 10 plus staff out in a small school, you're having other staff that are shifting. So the directive from the superintendent to each of the principals over the weekend was, start calling all your subs, just have them all in on Monday morning, we're going to need them. And we've been, pretty much, we've been getting by. So So we're open, we're staying open, and, it feels like there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's just going to be a ways off.
Ms. Stout?
Yes, Terry just asked one of my two questions, so that's good to hear that we have somewhat adequate staff. My other question, I hope wasn't already mentioned, but I didn't hear it. With this new guideline, which I'm not really all that clear on, if somebody's a close contact, do they have to test negative before they can stay in school or come back to school? Is this, I'm concerned that maybe the science isn't being followed. I don't mean for us, I mean in general, because we don't know that much about it, but maybe you could explain that again. I'll try to listen.
Sure. So in the flow charts that we have, Sharon, we have.
Yeah, I don't have that.
Well, so it's are you a close contact, and the big thing is, are you vaccinated? You're following this flow chart. Are you unvaccinated? You're following another one. This again consistent with the way the CDC guidance is, and the same goes for if someone in your household has COVID in terms of, it's a little different if you're vaccinated versus unvaccinated, but in short, if we stick with the concept of close contacts, the CDC and what we have been doing all along here is telling somebody that's vaccinated to continue to monitor for symptoms. Like if you start to have any cold symptoms, then stay home, get tested. If you are not vaccinated, then you're having to do either the test and stay option that we have if it's a close contact in school, or there is a quarantine at home. So there isn't a necessarily a testing requirement that's happening there. Where you find
for the children that have been vaccinated, they don't get any kind of testing as long as they're not, because I mean, I know lots of kids that have had COVID and had no symptoms.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm worried about. If they don't have symptoms, they can come back without being tested.
So where the testing comes in is any time in these flow charts, if you have symptoms, then testing is recommended. And one of the reasons why I think the pool testing that our district does, and we are one of the few districts around that's doing pool testing, is it does have the ability to go pick up the students who are asymptomatic. And if you think about it, the bulk of the 29 positive pools that we had from Monday's test, the kids were here in school, or the staff were here in school because they felt perfectly fine. And, so we were picking up those asymptomatic ones. And of that 25, I am guessing off the top of my head, maybe about 5 of them between Monday morning when we did the pool testing and Tuesday morning, had elected to stay home or started to, symptoms were sitting in. But you're right, Sharon, there is a lot of asymptomatic individuals, and that's where, the pool testing is sort of at least once a week. There's an effective way to sort of intervene.
Ms. Scott?
I'm thrilled with the kids that are doing that. Thank you.
Ms. Seabrett Long?
Scott, just a quick question. And Joy, yes, this chart is amazing. Vaccinated versus not vaccinated. Obviously, it's like the hot question, and it's a question that I, as a school committee member, get a lot. And I'm not sure the justification of it. I know we're following the CDC guidelines. Do you know like what the CDC, I've looked everywhere. What's the justification between testing and not testing when you're vaccinated and not vaccinating? Because I know we have a lot of kids that are vaccinated that are getting one form of COVID, and then we have students that are not vaccinated, and there's a lot of controversy about it. So is there a justification for that at all?
So I think the one thing to emphasize that while a lot of individuals that have been vaccinated have been catching it, first off, the odds of them catching COVID is less if they're vaccinated than unvaccinated. There was a study that Massachusetts did just prior, that they released just prior to Christmas, and again, just prior to Omicron coming in, that was looking at sort of the rates of infection that unvaccinated were having versus vaccinated versus boosted. So that a vaccine gave you a 5-fold protection, and that a booster gave you a 31-fold protection over being unvaccinated. So I think the CDC is sort of looking at this as sort of a who's more probable, so that an unvaccinated individual's 5 times in Omicron has probably changed these numbers some, but it's that there is some protection there. What doesn't happen in the United States, and you do see it abroad, is that there's guidance, if you were to go to a lot of European countries, that has a lot of wording on if you have had it. If you've had COVID, and because if one catches it, they also are developing antibodies for it, much like a vaccine. So the CDC, I think, is a little more silent on that, but that there is a protection factor that happens there too.
So as a follow-up, I think the only way I've been able to kind of process it in my brain is the varicella vaccination, where the chicken pox, and if you choose to not have your child or yourself vaccinated for chicken pox, in the event that your child attended a school and they weren't vaccinated for chicken pox, and someone in the school got chicken pox, your child wasn't allowed to attend school. Let's say they had a religious exemption, because I think that's the only way you can do it. They weren't allowed to attend school because they possibly could contract that and spread it to someone who perhaps can't have that vaccination or never had chickenpox as a child with a varicella, like someone who's pregnant, for instance. So if you have a student that's vaccinated and they're asymptomatic, so they're still going to school and they're not getting tested, you have a population of students, and this is just questions, you have a population of students that maybe can't have the vaccination, because I understand there may be a population of students that can't have the vaccination due to whatever circumstances. How does that impact them? Is it that the kids that are vaccinated, that the virus that they potentially have is not as dangerous, so that it's okay for them to be exposed to people that maybe aren't vaccinated? Does that make sense?
I think I got lost somewhere in but
if there's a population of students that aren't able to get vaccinated for various reasons, and we have students that are vaccinated, but they're asymptomatic, so they don't have to test, so they could be walking around with COVID in the hallways, but we're not testing them because based on the CDC guidelines, they're asymptomatic, so they can attend school. They potentially could spread COVID to someone who is not vaccinated or can't get the vaccination, or even who is vaccinated. Right. So I'm looking for the justification, if you know it, of why the CDC thinks it's okay that if you're not if you're vaccinated, you don't have to have a test unless you have symptoms.
Can I just clarify for my understanding what you're asking? So are
Yeah.
you talking about close contacts? So like if kids are deemed close contact, and then there's two different protocols? Is that
Yeah.
what you're asking? Like,
Close-
why are there two different protocols for these kids that have been exposed?
Yes.
Okay,
For one example, yes.
okay.
And I understand that we're following the CDC's guidelines, but what's not clear to me is why we're not following the same protocol for vaccinated and not vaccinated. Because the person who's vaccinated and walking around asymptomatic could still give the person who's vaccinated or unvaccinated for various reasons COVID,
Yeah,
which we're continuing to spread.
I think when it comes to testing, you know, there's really only testing that's you know, sort of recommended when there's symptoms. You know, so I don't know that it's different. You know, so even if, you know, so if you're vaccinated symptomatic, there's still sort of a, you know, you talk to the nurses, and the nurses will be saying, you know, you should go out and get a test. You're unvaccinated, you should go out, but without the symptoms, at the moment, we don't have that, and and I think what we do offer is every Monday pool testing, so that vaccinated, unvaccinated alike can do pool testing, and the following morning get an answer on if there's COVID or not found.
But only if they've signed up for pooled testing, correct?
Which the majority, you know, a
Right,
little over half have.
Ms. Tully?
In line with Jackie's question is, you know, our preschoolers they're not eligible to get vaccinated, so how are they signing up for pool testing too? And how, I guess I'm also curious about that same idea of how, if someone is asymptomatic, but around our preschoolers who are not able to get tested, and the preschoolers may also be asymptomatic, that to me seems like there's still a great potential for spread, and I don't understand how we could get I think this is just a really challenging concept when you think about kids who are unvaccinated, who can't be vaccinated for different reasons, and how vulnerable they are. And how, as a district, how can we ensure that everybody that they're around is not spreading them COVID unintentionally? What are the rates for the amount of preschool kids that are opting to be pool tested?
I'd have to go look that up and come back to you with what the different numbers are at each grade level. But I think it does speak to what's challenging about this disease is that you have a virus that can be, I mean, the reason it's so effective as a virus is that it can spread without people even knowing they're sick, and that's why it has, and I think particularly with this latest strain of Omicron, is that you're seeing this bump up because you have people that, if I take my extended family, host a Christmas dinner of 12, everybody at the table vaccinated and boosted, but the host doesn't realize that she had contracted COVID, and she's hosting. It's like it's fine, and it's not till oftentimes several days later where there's some mild symptoms, particularly in those who are who have had vaccines and boosted. And I think some of the challenges you also have is that the more people have had sort of a buildup of antibodies, either from catching it or from being vaccinated and boosted, they oftentimes are even far more likely to be completely asymptomatic. In other words, it's, the vaccines are doing what they're supposed to, keeping us from getting sick. doesn't necessarily mean that we're not quietly, our bodies, fighting it off, and we could be infectious during that time while our bodies are sort of quietly fighting it off.
Just one more thing, Scott, I would say that that's actually a perfect example of what I was trying to articulate, and that maybe we need to revisit our testing, and I don't know if it's due to the shortage of tests, and I know it's time. I mean, I know my own son was in the auditorium for an hour the other day for, I think it was pool testing, which is fine, but, because that's what has to happen, and I get that it's time, but maybe we need to revisit that, and how we as a district stand on testing for vaccinated and unvaccinated students. And I know it's simpler for us to just follow the CDC guidelines because it's clean and neat. But those were really great points that you just brought up. So I don't know if we could talk about it at our next meeting or make it an agenda item for something for us to move forward and discuss what those options would be and what that would look like before we, but I don't want to dwell on it too much tonight, but it's definitely something that I know is not a straightforward answer, so I appreciate your feedback.
So in terms of the testing, so our nurses, as part of the test and stay, are sort of following a DESI guideline in terms of when to test, and also sort of dovetailing in with CDC. The reality is the tests themselves, there's a finite supply. So, we have, and we're held accountable as a school district for reporting the result of every test that's used to make sure that we're actually using the tests, the tests, appropriately, because they are a limited commodity, which is why the state couldn't just get a truckload of tests for all staff on time, and I think you've heard like many on the news and from MTAs, like, well, why didn't we get enough for all the students too? And so the tests are expensive, in short supply. So there's that sort of logistical challenge, and the other important one, which you kind of alluded to it took an hour, is that each one of these tests takes time to administer and time to play out, and we have to be really cognizant of the fact that before COVID, our nurses had jobs to take care of splinters and cuts and coughs and bumps on the head and this and that. And we also have children that have more medically challenging things, that are diabetics and other medical conditions that that the nurses have to dole out medicine for throughout the day. And the challenge that we have, the balancing act, is we can't, even if we had access to all of these tests, we would potentially be taking our nurses offline for the very thing that they need to do. So so we did, using some of the this emergency relief money, we have added some extra nursing staff. Mm-hmm. We've been lucky. We got lucky the last week or 2 weeks of testing, where the state has actually sent a mobile support unit to us to help our nurses. Like when they heard we had 29 positives, we wouldn't have finished before the end of the school day had there not been more boots on the ground here. So it was diverting central office staff, and there was also, I think, 3 other individuals that came down from the state to help us get through all those positives.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Sharon.
Sharon, Ms. Stout.
I don't have a question, but I do want to say, Scott, please thank all the nurses for us, because I know I know what their job has been, and I don't have clue, but it seems very, very overwhelming and somewhat dangerous to do this. So, I personally, and I'm sure that the rest of the school committee agrees, that they deserve a lot of credit.
Definitely.
And Madam Chair, we gave them a round of applause earlier, and I feel like I want to do it again because they've really done
They're working hard.
a great job. And they're literally the first responders, so.
Yes, yes.
And you can imagine that right now, I think at the high school alone, just today, there were 6 students that came into the nurse's office today, and the nurses were working with them one-on-one, and, they tested positive and went home, and, and every day in nurses' offices in each one of the schools, there's oftentimes somebody, at least one, that's, that's how prevalent it is out there.
Scary.
Okay, moving on, we are going to jump down to our action items. We have voted already on number 1 and 2. We are moving to vote on the preschool from the presentation that we received last meeting. Before we have discussion, we need a motion on the table.
I have a point of clarification.
Okay.
I actually would ask that we consider postponing this vote because we have, at our last meeting, we asked for additional information that was not provided in our agenda packet. We got a little bit of that information emailed us today at 3:45, I believe. I know Ms. Scott was not here at our last meeting. I feel like there's more information that we need that we haven't received yet, and so I would ask if we could postpone this vote until our next meeting so we could get further information.
I would want to know how other committee members feel about that. Ms. Brett-Long?
If Melissa's here, I just don't remember timeline-wise, if she can refresh our memory. You there?
Ms. McGuire, do you mind chiming in?
Yeah.
Melissa, is there,
Sure.
Ms. McGuire, is there a timeline for the vote on the, can this wait for the next meeting, or, I just don't remember.
Can you just back up and ask the question again? Are you talking about the program about? Because I missed what Ms. Polly was asking.
We're wondering if, to vote on the regional preschool program versus the, any other model, can we wait until our next meeting, which is January 20th, to vote on that?
You certainly can. It's, I mean, for us, it's not required at the will of the committee. We're currently operating as, with Chatham and Harwich at Harwich.
Okay, so for right now, it would be okay to digest this new information received today and then bring it back to vote on January 20th?
Do you want this presentation then for the 20th versus tonight?
No, we don't need a new presentation.
Yeah,
I
we
think
don't need
she just
a
needs more
presentation.
information.
Yeah, I think, and part of my rationale for asking to postpone this vote was, my understanding is that we would have another opportunity to discuss it before the vote. And as you and I talked about earlier, Meredith, you said we could have that discussion once there's a motion on the floor and to vote it, or motion to vote, we could have more discussion. I guess I'd ask that we have an opportunity as a committee to ask more specific questions to Melissa so that we can get more information between now and our next vote. So what's the correct procedure for that to happen? Because it's not an agenda item for tonight.
Right. Ms. Gaines?
I would recommend if the committee agrees, to put it under reports and discussions for the next agenda with the action item that we are going to vote. I would also recommend rewording preschool presentation to preschool configuration recommendation, because it's not really clear, to be honest, that what we're actually voting on. It looks to me like we're voting on a presentation, and I think we're actually voting on the recommendation.
Okay. Ms. Seabright-Long?
I would also suggest that if anyone has anything that they did not feel was presented or that they wanted more information on, that they reach out to Melissa or the appropriate party to gather that information for themselves prior to, or request that it's specifically added into the presentation, so that they can be prepared to vote at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Russell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Melissa, just some clarification. The preschool configuration recommendation booklet that you gave us this evening, this is the same recommendation but a different configuration than you presented 2 weeks ago to us, which at the end of your presentation, you said, yes, I'm looking for a recommendation, either A or B or C, as I understand it. At the time, reviewing your past attempt to describe what was going on, I knew where I was headed as far as a vote. This is just a further clarification, and I kind of apologize tonight, so, because if it's not pressing, I would agree with Danielle, we can wait, but if it's the same rationale, it just kind of reinforces what I thought was our presentation 2 weeks ago.
So this presentation focuses solely on what configurations could potentially occur at Chatham Elementary. In our last presentation, we presented all of the information on the current configuration, on the current residency, and then really presented one scenario for Chatham. And then I had presented verbally, multiple ways in which the preschool could operate and reasons why they might not be as effective and efficient. And so wanted to clearly show that in this presentation so that people could really see what that would look like visually and have a conversation about why not those different configurations could or could not work. So if that makes sense, Mr. Russell.
Does that make it clear for you?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Dr. Carpenter, and then Ms. Stout.
Just to, for clarity, we could easily put it into the next meeting. We would need to go take a vote at the next meeting on it, and we need to stagger agenda items at the next meeting, because at our next meeting, we also vote the budget. So what Michael and I can do is we can develop 2 iterations of the budget, because one vote next week then causes the budget to sort of shift a little bit, but we can do that, so it's fine.
So is that, okay. Ms. Tolley? Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. Ms. Stout?
Yes. I just had a quick question. When you talk about the, I don't know what the term is, but related services that the kids need besides a teacher and assistant, would that be OT and speech, or are there other things?
Point of
That would
order.
be speech, OT, physical therapy, vision.
Point of order.
Deaf and hard of hearing services, mobility training.
Hang on 1 second.
I think
Ms.
we're
McGuire.
getting into a discussion about something that's not technically on the agenda.
Still in the point
Yeah.
So being in the point of clarity, I feel maybe we can hold the discussion and move this to the next meeting with a potential vote and have this be one of the high items on the agenda and have the budget be one of the lower items. Is that what I'm hearing you say, Dr. Carpenter? Yes. Okay. Are we all, do we need to vote on this? All right,
Just
so we will
consensus.
move this to the next meeting.
Question.
Ms. Tully?
I do have a question about this as it relates to the budget. So,
But we can't ask that because we're just in point of clarity.
okay, let me see.
Clarity
if I
around
ca-
whether or not we were voting on the presentation, on the preschool configuration tonight.
Okay, can I have a minute, or, I want to, I think what I'm trying to ask fits in with the point of clarity, but I'm not sure if it does.
If it's related to budget, I wonder if it's something you could email Dr. Carpenter before the next presentation if it's related to the preschool, since we're not voting tonight.
It's not about the budget of the preschool, it's about, when we talk about the budget of the preschool, I'm sorry, I'm struggling to form it so that,
I think we hold it.
okay,
Yep.
okay.
Okay, so moving on. So, bringing back for a second reading, policy file JJF, LH, also GIB, student activity accounts, the Lighthouse Fund. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? I see no discussion, so a roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tully?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Seibert Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye. The next, we are bringing back for a second reading policy file JIF, DIB, student activity accounts. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? A roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tully?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Seibert Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Finally, the presentation of warrants has been made, and I am looking for a motion
So moved.
to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Stout?
Can I ask just a general question
Definitely not.
about our agenda for next time?
Can you email that to us? Just because it's not, we're in the middle of a motion for
I know,
adjournment.
this is,
We haven't adjourned
yeah,
yet, though.
because you didn't see me. But, I guess I'm just going to say, could we have anything we're going to vote on to be under discussion so we can talk about it?
Yeah.
If we need to.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'm looking for a motion.
I think we had it.
She motioned. I seconded.
Okay, roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tully?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Seibert Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye, and we are adjourning at 8:28.